Coming at you from the south side of Chicago, straight out of my mother's basement at my childhood home, I'd like to welcome you all to the Power to Persist. JD LaRock, you are here on the south side of Chicago in the basement in Woodlawn with me at my childhood home. Welcome to the Power to Persist podcast, my friend.
Thank you very much. Dr. McMorris, great to be with you. Great to be with you here in your neighborhood.
I tell you what, for those that don't know, I would not be the doctor if it were not for you. Dr. LaRock was my advisor for my doctoral studies at Northeastern University. And so you're the reason for the season, brother.
That's nice of you to say, but you put in a lot of hard work yourself. Very glad we could partner together on important work, and I'm sure we'll get into that among many other topics in this conversation.
I'm just glad. I just can't believe I've got my professor here, in my childhood home here on the south side. That's pretty cool.
This is where every student wants to be with their professor, right? Put them on the hot seat.
No doubt about it. Right? My mom's upstairs, got you in the basement here. Let's get right to it.
All right.
You've been in the administration at Northeastern University since 2010. Mm-hmm. And teaching there since 2015. Right now, we're seeing it. College campuses are literally the leading edge of change, and surely you've seen your share of it in the last 15 years. So, in recent months, though, institutions of higher education have faced unique and possibly unprecedented changes as they navigate issues around free speech, student visas, the disappearance of research dollars, and very, very, very close federal scrutiny on university policies and procedures. So my question to you is, how has this new era changed college campuses?
I think that colleges are really waking up to the fact that for a long time, they have been benefiting from a system of federal support that they all too often took for granted. And let me get behind the politics and get to what I think is really happening at a deeper level here. You have a country where people want opportunity, all walks of life, all races, all backgrounds.
Right.
And they're finding that this thing that the country has held up as really important for them to make something out of their lives, that it's not working for them. For a number of different reasons. It's not affordable. Mm-hmm. It professes values sometimes that seem out of step with their own values. Now, rightly or wrongly, we can get into that too, but there's a mismatch culturally all too often. Most importantly, there's a mismatch between the mentality of all too many academic institutions around what they're there for and what people see higher education as being there for. First and foremost, most people go into higher education because they want a good job. They want a good career. They want to take wherever they are and go somewhere else. That's often not the mentality of enough colleges and universities. That's why I've been very glad to be affiliated with Northeastern all these years, because it's one of the few schools, because of its co-op program and its commitment to experiential learning, they've always thought that way. So what happens when you get basically a populace that's unhappy with this important institution that's not serving their interests? They start making noise about it. And what do political leaders do? They start questioning it. What's happening now is not new. It's just the latest and most severe manifestation of 20 years of people becoming increasingly dissatisfied with what higher education has been doing for them. And I saw this even before I got into work as an administrator and a professor at Northeastern. When I was working on Capitol Hill as a Senate staffer for Ted Kennedy, these deep concerns about affordability and the value proposition were already there in the early 2000s. So, we can get into further details about what's happening on campuses now and the government's, posture, particularly the federal government. But there's something real behind all of this. It's not just the politics that we need to look at.
I'm a proud alumnus of Morehouse College, historically black college and university. I'm on the board of Miles College, another historically black college and university. So when we talk about this issue, are we talking about predominantly white institutions, or what we call PWIs? Where do HBCUs fit into this new trending dynamic? in this issue?
Well, that's a really interesting question, particularly when you look at the historical place of HBCUs and why they were established in the first place.
Right.
I mean, talk about institutions that were established because the rest of the institution wasn't doing for an important part of the population.
Correct.
HBCUs were founded because Black Americans couldn't get an education in other parts of higher education at all.
Right.
They were completely excluded. So I think that HBCUs continue to have a strong place in the American higher education system. My impression is that the problem is not mostly with institutions like that or institutions that have a strong sense of who they are. Again, Northeastern, in a different way, not an HBCU, but has a strong sense of who it is. It's a college that does recognize the link between work and education. HBCUs, particularly Morehouse, the whole concept of Morehouse, the Morehouse man, and a really well-defined concept of Black male excellence.
Yes.
That's an institution that knows what it's there for and is able to telegraph that not just to the community it serves, but to the world at large. More institutions need to be more like a Morehouse or a Northeastern and really understand who they are so that people can find them and participate in them in the right ways.
They say you can always tell a Morehouse man, but you can't tell him much. So
I don't know. I haven't found that to be the case with
I'm
you.
glad. Thank you very much. I'm glad we have that on record and recorded too, by the way, that you said that. How are universities and institutions like Morehouse College adapting to what appears to be a hostile environment for those in higher education?
Well, I think that ultimately institutions are figuring out that they need to be more entrepreneurial. Because whether it is the funds that come in from student loans or the funds that come in from government research funds, there are a lot of governmental investments, some would call subsidies, to almost every higher education institution. And so again, right now, one result of what's going on is that institutions really have to rethink their business model in some fundamental ways. Will things change wholesale? I don't think we're at the point of saying that yet. But certainly, institutions are understanding that the student loan money is not going to flow in the same way that it did. The inflow of international students because of changes with respect to foreign policy and visas, that's not flowing in the same way as it did. The flow of research money, which has been a really robust funding flow for many colleges and universities, that's not coming in the same way that it did. So if you had like 3-4 key revenue streams that you found were all of a sudden changing, you would be getting together with your leadership team and saying, all right, how are we going to keep this thing alive and thriving in the future, knowing that the way we have fundamentally done business is not going to be the way we are going to be able to do business, at least in the near future.
So would online education be an example of an institution being entrepreneurial, or what does that look like?
It could. Of course, that's a mature market now.
Yes.
And so, I would not say that if you're a college that is experiencing some stress in the current environment, that making a bid to go into online, if you haven't been there, is going to be successful. You have to have a pretty good brand, I think, at this point to be able to do that. More so, I think it's getting back to your identity, whatever that is, getting back to your roots and showing your value proposition in a unique way. Because the beautiful thing about learning and about people, and the kind of interesting thing about this issue of mismatch, is that people are not monolithic. The mass at a massive scale is kind of saying to the higher ed sector, look, we're not getting what we need. But when you break it down, people actually need a variety of different things from higher education. They need that value proposition to a career, but they need that actually delivered in many different ways educationally. Because and I know, I saw this as a professor, you saw this as a student in my classes. People learn in different ways.
Yes.
So if you have a good learning model, and one that you can also be very clear about, and you can focus on those fundamentals, you might help yourself out.
A professor, engaged in academia, the thing that I love about you is that you are so multifaceted, and you've got another thing that I love talking about, and I want to make everyone aware. You're the CEO of the Network for Teaching Entrepreneurship. We know it as NFTE. which works to provide entrepreneurship education for youth in underserved communities, much like the community where we're sitting today. Can you talk a little bit about this program for everyone and actually tell us what it does?
Yeah, thank you. So we're so proud of NFTE. So NFTE was founded nearly 40 years ago by a school teacher from the Bronx named Steve Mariotti. And he was, like many newer teachers, really struggling to connect with his students. But he realized that all young people have an interest in money, especially those that don't have it and that want it.
Yes.
And young people all have ambition and drive and passions and interests. And he figured out that if he could start to connect those two through a novel educational program, that he might be onto something special. So he started that, and that was 37 years ago in the Bronx. And today, NFTE is one of the largest entrepreneurship education organizations in the world. I became CEO just about 6 years ago.
Wow.
These days, we serve 76,000 students annually. We work in 30 states across the U.S., and we work in 35 countries as well. So it truly is a global movement. We're focused on underserved communities. We're focused on communities where young people wouldn't normally have a lot of entrepreneurs in their lives, or examples or models or networks to begin becoming entrepreneurs. And through the educational program we provide, through the corporate support that we bring in, through the mentors we bring in from those companies, we put together a program where a young person can, in the space of a summer, an after-school program, in one semester in school, or a 1 year in school, basically go through a process where they take an idea and a passion and they turn that into a great business plan and a great business pitch.
So what surprises you about, you engage with all these young people? What are some of the biggest things that surprise you? And by the way, when I think about programs, similar to NFTE, I want you to brag a little bit. Like, who's come through there that folks would be like, wow, who are some of the alums of NFTE that we can look at today and just be blown away by? And probably but for NFTE, they would not have achieved the success they have.
Well, let me start there. And by the way, 14 of our most distinguished alumni are actually newly featured in Michael Milken's new Center for Advancing the American Dream, which is opening up this fall right across the street from the Treasury Department in the White House in Washington, D.C.
Yeah, I know exactly what that
NFTE
is.
has the Entrepreneurship Gallery.
Wow.
And it is totally devoted to the NFTE story and the story of some of our great entrepreneurs.
That's cool real estate. That's right across the street from the White House.
That's exactly
I know
right.
exactly where it is.
Yeah, it's very nice.
Yeah.
Actually, so it's the old Riggs Bank and the old Freedman's Bank.
Directly across the street from Treasury and the White House.
That Milken has redeveloped into this marquee educational center, museum, gallery, thought leadership hub. It's going to be a fantastic resource for the country and the world going forward.
And you've been a participant in the Milken Institute because I've seen you there.
Yes. Well, Mike Milken was one of NFTE's early funders. Way back when he supported the expansion of our summer biz camp program. And we reconnected recently, and this is the latest outcome of that.
I love
so one distinguished NFTE alumnus would be Robert Refkin, founder and CEO of Compass, the real estate platform.
Yes.
He got his start in a NFTE biz camp, a summer camp in Oakland. Now he's an incredibly skilled individual as well. He parlayed his interest in entrepreneurship and his own talents into a White House fellowship and internships and roles at Goldman Sachs, and eventually turned it to launching the company.
Compass is like a major real estate platform.
I mean, its valuation is in the hundreds of millions of dollars, and you can go more or less anywhere in the country.
All right,
and
everyone
find
listening,
Compass.
get your kids in NFTE. So
there we go. There we go. But it doesn't even have to be big corporate. So one of my favorite NFTE entrepreneurs is Andre McCain, who is an entrepreneur out of DC. He's a restaurateur.
Love it.
And he has a fast casual concept called Half Smoke. You know how in DC they refer to the hot dogs as Half Smoke, right? That's the name of the restaurant.
Nice.
And it's a chain.
Nice.
And he's got one in downtown DC and some other locations. And I like to take my NFTE friends and supporters there when I'm in DC, because it's a physical embodiment of what our program does.
Does he have a vegan version for me?
And I don't think so, but I'll let him know, because I know that
we can name it.
That's what it would take to get you in there. Very good. That's right. How about it? Right. A veggie dog, something like that.
No doubt
Vegan
about
veggie
it.
dog.
All over it.
All right, we'll do that for you.
a key part of the process of your work at NFTE is igniting the entrepreneurial mindset.
Yeah.
Just to name a few of these entrepreneurial mindset archetypes: comfort with risk, initiative and self-reliance, and problem solving. These are what I would say very powerful tools that I think about a lot in my work on building habits for resilience. Which of these archetypes do you think is the most crucial for young people to learn, not just as a young entrepreneur, but for life?
You know, of all the special domains that NFTE elevates as connected to entrepreneurship, you know, there's a few special ones. You've named a couple: initiative and self-reliance, comfort with risk. Another one that I like is future orientation. And I think if you combine those three, or even the first and the third, initiative and self-reliance, and then future orientation, that actually connects powerfully in my mind to what you have written up so beautifully in your book as the power to persist.
Yes.
And having the power to persist. Because you can't persist unless you try and keep trying.
Right.
That's very much what your book is all about.
Right.
And that's very much at the heart of our philosophy at NFTE. But you have to try with a goal in mind. And that's where future orientation comes in. You know, so many times with young people and adults for that matter, we get very wrapped up in the mistakes that we've made and the bad things that have happened to us. And look, we should take stock of those. We should reflect on those. But it's so much more important, I think, to orient a young person toward moving forward. Keep moving forward. Keep your eye on what's ahead. And even more than that, looking out at how things are developing, looking at the world, not just how it is right now, but where it's going to go, and then moving to that. You know, so right now, you know, I get a lot of questions these days because I'm a nonprofit in a space, an education space that's very volatile.
Yes.
You know, our politics in the country right now are very different.
Yes.
It's very unpredictable. And I get a lot of questions from peers and my board, you know, how are you feeling about this? Are you worried? I said, no, I'm not worried. I'm actually trying to understand it all so I can understand where this is all going.
Yeah.
And that's the same sort of thing that we try to impart and develop in our learners. Because, you know, when you think about it from the lens of entrepreneurship, Lamell, how can you possibly ever create a fantastic and successful new business, you know, if you aren't looking at not the world as it is, but where the world is going to be? A need that needs to be met that hasn't been met yet. A problem that needs to be solved that hasn't been solved yet. What's the world going to look like as a result of your business when you meet that need and solve that problem? That's one of the ways you can think about future orientation. So I like that one very much.
So speaking of future orientation as an organization, and particularly when I think about the young people that you're dealing with, what are you telling them about this new pending world? Actually, it's not even new, that's upon us, AI, and how as entrepreneurs, budding entrepreneurs, or even just young people navigating what this world would look like. What are you telling them? How are you all preparing them for this?
In some ways, we don't have to tell them much because they are quite naturally going to the AI bandwagon on their own. So, you know, it's been about 3 years since ChatGPT came out.
Right.
And I said to my team, mark my words, we are going to see NFTE students start to use AI in their business plans and their business pitches this cycle. Remember, it came at around Thanksgiving, right, 3 years ago?
Right.
And I said our main business plan competitions, we have a whole set regionally in the U.S. in the springtime. And so I said, watch, it's November. By May, we're going to see lots of students come up with AI in their business plans and pitches. And in fact, that's right.
Wow.
In two ways. One, they were using AI as the basis for a business. So a lot of AI-enabled chatbots to help with a problem or a service or a need, stuff like that. Very much in the way you saw internet businesses emerge, you know, 20, 30 years ago with the internet revolution. Secondly, students are just so facile with AI tools. So whether it's GPT or some of the design tools, I mean, think about all the AI tools a student can use to put together a really snazzy, great-looking business pitch and business plan.
Right.
The other thing, which is very interesting from the standpoint of education and the learners we serve, AI turns out to be a really helpful tool to help underserved and I would say undereducated students level up. So we have many students who are English language learners, for example, right? You can use AI functionalities to level up the written part of your pitch and help you if you're an English language learner. If you want to use AI to take your pitch talk track and make it better, you can do it. And we see students do that. As I said, they can also use the visual and design elements and use it to enhance their decks. So, there are bad ways that AI can be used too.
Sure.
I mean, you don't ever want AI to do the thinking for you. However, that's generally not what we see our students do. And as a matter of fact, you were talking about NFTE alumni. We have a NFTE alumnus who graduated from our program about 15 years ago. His name is Cody Chang. He's in this Milken exhibit too.
Okay.
His latest venture is an AI company.
Wow.
An AI education company.
Wow.
And we're working with him, and we have developed 2 custom-built AIs. One that helps young people, students, enhance their pitches and their ideation of their businesses in just the ways that I was describing.
Yeah.
And then we have a second AI that helps teachers do initial grading of business plans, because AI is really good at sort of basic stuff, and that leaves the teachers more time to give more sophisticated feedback. So at NFTE, we're generally pro AI, but we see the students embrace it. We've embraced the good that we see in it, and we totally think it needs to be and will be a standard part of educational methodologies going forward.
Life has a funny way of testing us right when we think we have it all figured out. Those moments remind us that resilience is not about never failing. That's what the Power to Persist is all about. 8 simple habits to help you stay grounded, strong, and focused when life gets a little heavy. I'd be honored if you came along on this journey with me. Visit LamellMcMorris.com to get your copy of The Power to Persist. And listen to the Power to Persist podcast so we can continue to persist together. So, you had to drive here, and, Woodlawn is a historically underserved community. And so when I think about AI and technology and the young people that you serve, before we get to that step, is there an access to this technology? Are people actually able, my neighbors here, can they even get to the point where they can have a conversation about AI and think about it in that way?
They can, but there is an access issue, and I'll illustrate that by way of another story.
Okay.
You mentioned I do a lot in my life. I'm civically engaged.
Yes, you are.
So I'm doing my thing at Northeastern. I'm doing my thing at NFTE. The other thing that I've been spending my time on over this last decade is chairing the board of my local community college in Massachusetts.
Love it.
Now, communities it serves, immigrant communities, a lot of newcomers, lower income. And so here's the interesting thing. At Northeastern and at NFTE, we got into conversations about AI like right away.
Sure.
Northeastern was immediately having conversations about AI. As a matter of fact, as you know, I supported the president of our university when he wrote his book in 2017,
yes,
long before ChatGPT,
wow,
about AI and education. So this
wow,
is something that some institutions have been thinking about for a long time.
Right.
It was notable to me at the community college, despite AI being in the news, that it just wasn't part of the conversation. And so, I tried to bring that into the conversation because, like you, I was looking at this thing and I was saying to myself, this is going to be important. This is going to be consequential for people and their opportunities. This could be meaningful for education. Let's start talking about it. So I think the access comes when, communities that traditionally haven't been included in the conversation find themselves hard-pressed sometimes to be naturally involved in the conversation, which means that there's an imperative for well-meaning people like you and me to bring these themes into the conversation. NFTE students wouldn't have all of the kind of robust things that we're trying to do with AI if we weren't also trying to bring that to the schools where the students are naturally coming to it themselves. So I think civil society, which is a part of what you and I are,
Yes.
it's very much how I think of NFTE,
Yes.
an important institution in civil society. Institutions in civil society have a responsibility and an opportunity to bring these conversations to places where they can make a difference. So that's how you solve the access issue.
What an awesome segue, as if you're looking at my note cards. In 2021, you and I wrote a joint article discussing how the presidential administration at the time was pushing for more entrepreneurial education for young people. We also discussed how the aftermath of the murder of George Floyd created a moment that, and I quote, compelled thousands of business leaders to examine how they can use the tools of capitalism and corporate power to create a more just and equitable society. We also mentioned how in the moment we saw, again, and I quote, real evidence of companies using the structures of finance, employment, and social capital with the specific intent of supporting Black entrepreneurs, businesses, and employees. Fast forward to 2025. Here we are. As you look back at that moment, what fruit came to bear from those efforts? First of all, did we see any real structural reckoning? What are some of the obvious broken promises, and where do we go from here?
Yeah. I mean, I think the answer is pretty obvious that we did not see a structural change, a structural reckoning. I think we saw a lot of good aspirations at the time, and I'm sure that, I have been disappointed to see here and now who is sticking with commitments that they made and, who may not have been as sincere in their commitments. Definitely some good came out of it because that whole era did reorient, say, certain parts of corporate philanthropy to supporting communities like those you and I work to assist,
right,
and where NFTE puts a lot of its focus. And those are real. I guess the way I think about it is that, it goes back to this point of institutions and what they're really about and what their values are really about. We're talking about higher ed earlier. I think the same holds true for corporations. Those who have stuck with these values are companies who had those values before George Floyd,
right,
and before that moment
right,
in our nation's history.
Right.
And so I see them sticking with it. But did we see structural change? No. No. What do you think?
Dr. Maya Angelou was famous for saying, when someone shows you who they are,
believe them.
Right?
Yeah.
I think we've got a long way to go.
Yeah.
When I think back to some of the photos of some of the people that we see on the wall here that I hold as heroes and heroines, the height of the civil rights movement and the work of the 60s and even prior to that. And when I think about some of my heroes who were, catalysts for change in the 80s and 90s around Wall Street, and like Reverend Jackson in financial services and in media now, clearly when I think about Black and brown women and men who are business owners, and even the advances that we made from an employment standpoint and folks in the C-suite, we've made those. But for as much as things have changed, you're right. When we talk about systems and structures, I think we're fundamentally not quite back to where we started, but definitely a clear acknowledgement that we've got a lot of work ahead of us. And so, that's why you and I continue to be who we are and champion the issues that we champion and invite others, like-minded, to join us in this regard.
Yeah. But let me tell you something. I'm maybe a little bit too much of an optimist, but I am an optimist. And I look at what's happening now, which is there's a fundamental reordering of education going on right now.
Okay.
We talked about the university side. I think on the K-12 side, you're seeing, again, interest in much more career-connected learning, work-based learning, career and technical education type schools, just more connection between the world of work and the world of education, which as an entrepreneurship education CEO, I celebrate and I want to see
Sure.
entrepreneurship be very much at the center of that. But you're also seeing a lot of states make moves that, again, I think are trying to get people more in tune and schools more in tune with practical things, financial literacy. There's a lot of states that are moving to more school choice and supporting homeschooling. They're moving delivery onto more online and hybrid modes. Again, this is responding to what people are saying about the different ways they want education to be there for themselves and their children. It's a little scary to people who are invested, as I am. I'm invested in the idea of the traditional public school model that we all know. But we also know that people are different.
Sure.
And one model is not going to work for everybody. So the optimist in me looks at what's happening with all this new energy around school choice and homeschooling and digital delivery. And I say to myself, maybe we can make a better system for everybody out of this. You know, let's try not to get so wrapped up in the emotions and the politics of the moment, but maybe we can move pedagogy and policy in the right direction overall.
I hope so. You know, I hope what you see as advancement and opportunity does not further exacerbate gaps.
Yeah.
Right?
And it well could.
And
it all depends on who's
yeah.
leading it in the details and how the details play out.
To be continued on that one. That
Yeah.
sounds like another podcast coming up.
Yeah.
We'll follow up. 2020 and all of the major socio-political changes that came with it demanded an unprecedented level of accountability and public response from corporations that were quite used to sitting on the sidelines during tumultuous times. Now that the tides appear to have turned, and in a more conservative era, corporations are quickly backtracking on previous commitments and declarations of values that might be deemed the dreaded woke. Is this cycle of whiplash and needing to reinvent a public-facing corporate identity every 4 years to line up with political priorities, is this the new normal?
Well, I think it's the reality, but I wish it weren't normal because, to be honest, I don't think that it really serves businesses or society in general when the private sector gets too wrapped up with politics and the dominant ideology that's in power at the time. Companies are bigger than that.
Right.
The private sector is bigger than that, and I also think that we tend to spend a lot of time perseverating about the words we use and getting very bent out of shape around particular words instead of taking a little bit of extra time to actually understand what we value behind those words. Is one of the things I like about entrepreneurship. I mean, we joke about it at NFTE. My team and I joke about it. Say, entrepreneurship might be one of the last things that the left and the right can agree on. And I say, well, it's very true, because if you go to someone on the right, you can talk about what we do in a very authentic way. And I can say, we are pro-capitalism. Of course we're pro-capitalism, right? You can't have entrepreneurship without capitalism.
Right.
We are for individual achievement, right? Bedrock value of this country. You can't be an entrepreneur, as we were discussing earlier, if you don't have that individual initiative and self-reliance. But I can go to a very different type of audience and I can say, let's talk about access to capital. Let's talk about generational wealth. Let's talk about wealth building. Let's talk about inequality. I am literally talking about the exact same program, and I can authentically use sets of words to different communities, and they will both really like it, and I didn't compromise a thing because I know what I'm here to do, and I can, engage in a conversation about it with different people in their language. Now, what I want to do and do beyond that is then get behind those surface level words and get them to embrace the deeper meaning of it all. Because again, and this may be the optimist in me speaking here, but I truly believe that if we take some time to get past the flashpoints and the trigger words that set us off and start getting us, going into our foxholes and our corners, and we can start listening to each other a little bit more, start understanding that sometimes you have to speak one another's language in order to form the foundation, then you can get behind it and you can get to a bigger place. And when you get to that bigger and deeper place, you start figuring out that there's actually a lot more that we have in common than divides us. That's what I have found as a professor and as an educator at NFTE, and that's how I try to navigate moments like these.
How does a company hold on to their values when the next administration can weaponize the same values you build your business on?
Well, I mean, that's not so easy. I'll admit that. But I will return one more time to the idea that if you know who you are in the first place, then you can stand true to your values and not feel like you are compromising anything, no matter who's in power at the time. So I think about, the corporate supporters of NFTEs that are our longest standing.
Right.
EY is the best example. Now, I don't have any inside knowledge into how that company is navigating this particular moment.
Right.
But what I can tell you is that their brand is very strongly built on supporting entrepreneurs. And so that existed before the current set of leaders came into power. That will exist after the current set of leaders leave. And that is a through line that allows them to do what they do and continue to do it in authentic ways.
Do you think we're going back to an era where corporate and social responsibility are non-existent?
No, I don't. And I think there's a very simple reason why. There are far too many people working in those companies who insist that their companies have some kind of value. That value doesn't have to be political or politicized, but people come to work. They certainly come to work in a nonprofit because they are there for some positive social value that they want to live out through the work that they do. And I think many people, and I would even say most people, even work at corporations with some kind of motivation like that. It's look, let me ask you, Lamell, is it all about money for you?
No.
Is it all about money for me?
No.
Is it all about money for most people? I don't think so.
Yeah.
And so CSR won't go away, corporate social responsibility won't go away, because the people who work in the EYs and the PayPals and the Intuits and the Goldman Sachs and all the great companies that support NFTE, they will still continue to insist and look for companies that share those values.
You started out as my professor, and you've morphed into my friend.
Yes.
And one of the things I admire the most about you is the way you dote on your wife and your daughter.
Oh.
What role do they play on your own personal journey for resilience and the power to continue to persist?
Oh, well, I'm so glad you asked that. That's very touching. Thank you for seeing that.
Yes, sir.
And it's so nice, by the way, that our relationship has morphed into the really strong friendship that it has. Well, look, I mean, whether it's that or your family members and loved ones, you need people there to support you. I mean, my wife is my closest and best advisor, my best business advisor.
Yes.
I joke with her all the time, but it's not really a joke. I was like, can I hire you as my HR chief? Can I hire you as my CFO? She's got, a great read on everything. But more than that, she's a real thought partner with me in strategizing and figuring out situations. She is just there to listen to me. Sometimes it's just listening because I need to vent. Sometimes it's listening because I want her advice to solve a problem. But she knows me.
Yeah.
She knows me, so she knows what I'm about. She knows the good things that I can do. She knows my blind spots.
Yeah.
And she can, in the most appropriate and loving way, bring her understanding of all of that to the table. With my daughter, Callie, who's just entering high school.
Wow.
I mean, look, NFTE has been around primarily for 38 years to support high schoolers. We work with middle schoolers, and we're even now working with elementary school. We work with post-secondary. But the core student who's a NFTE student is a 10th or 11th grader. And our students and they all have the same kind of aspirations. Mm-hmm. They're all at the same phase of life. They're trying to understand who they are. And I don't know how you think about it, but I turned 50 not that long ago, and I think I have come to understand that the primary purpose of life is simply to figure out who you really are. And if you can really figure out who you are, and you can have just a couple of people around you who love you for who you are and will support you for who you are and what you want to do because of that, you're golden. You will have a great life. And so I am very fortunate to have family members and friends like that in my life, and I try to do the same thing for them.
Sounds a little like Rudyard Kipling, right? What does it really mean for us to gain that point where we become truly women and men of character? So this is summertime shy, like you're in Chicago or summertime. Like, what else you gonna do while you're here besides hang out with me in the basement here and do the podcast?
You know that I'm a big baseball fan, so it's Cubs game tonight.
Nice.
I will be there.
Nice.
I love Wrigley. You know, I live in the Boston area, so of course my home ballpark is Fenway. Of course, my loyalties are to the Mets, being originally from Queens. But I will give Chicago lots of props for having the other historic ballpark that is left.
The other,
and I will. Because it's only Fenway and Wrigley that are the like truly century old.
Between which one is the most historic, but they both are beautiful.
Well, I can give your viewers and listeners a little opinion about that. So I'm going to say that Fenway is the more unique ballpark because it's very weird with the different angles and the green monster and all that. Right. But Wrigley is the more stately ballpark. I'm going to tell you something, though. I hope maybe tonight I will see a change. But my previous visits to Wrigley, it needed to work on their hot dog game a little bit.
Really?
Yeah, a little bit.
Whoa. Yeah. We're known in Chicago for hot dogs.
Well, that's the thing. How can that be, right? So that the standard dog you get is not, like you can get in some of the stands around here.
Interesting.
And I know I'm in Chicago, so no ketchup on the hot dog. Yeah. I know that.
I typically do mustard and onions, but here we put everything on a hot dog. So,
but I hear no ketchup. You can't do that. It's kind of forbidden.
I don't know.
You didn't hear
that?
Oh,
I don't know about
I heard
that. Maybe
That's
I need
what
to check my Chicago card.
Right.
JD, I can't thank you enough for taking time out, and this has been incredible and quite an honor to have you as a guest on The Power to Persist. You are my professor. You remain my teacher. And you are my friend. Thank you very much for being here.
Well, the honor is mine, and thank you for writing your book and bringing out all your ideas out into the world. You are really committed to helping others. That's one thing that I know about you, whether it's your immediate neighborhood or the many places where you work, and now bringing out an important piece of writing into the world. I will commend you. When I was done doing my dissertation, I was like, I'm not writing anything for a while. And you did yours, then you turned right around and wrote this. So good for you.
Well, thank you, my friend.
All right.
Thanks for being an inspiration.
Thanks.
All right. Make sure to like and subscribe wherever you're listening so you stay in the know about future episodes. See you next time, my friends.
Resonate.